Yo, Estrangement is seriously one of my favorite charts of all time. Seriously, top 5, like alongside Alone Intelligence. This chart was originally released in Skittle Selection 7 and was recently dropped as the 13 in ECFA 2021's Boss Pack number 2. And this chart just hits all the right boxes for me. Minimal usage of Skittles. I mean, the song is dumb hype. There's some foot speed. There's like a long section that really rewards burst control. There's very tasteful usage of crossovers at the end, but not throughout the whole chart, which I'm really happy with because I'm like not good at crossovers. And it's also decently stamina intensive, so I get a thrill out of playing it. I do love playing stamina and I love playing tech, but anytime I feel like there's a chart that combines both worlds really well, I get really happy about it. So overall, in terms of just like the Vincent tier list of charts, this chart is hard in just all of the right ways. So perfect chart for me. With all that said, let's take a look. This run is from Kyle's from the first week of April as I was road tripping back home from Boston. And I had been playing for an hour 45, and I told myself I would focus on this chart for the last 15 minutes. So basically, if I hit the 2-hour mark and I didn't get a score I was happy with, I would just call it good. And I think when you're grinding, it's important to set cutoff points, so that way you don't burn yourself out from playing something over and over again. I intentionally didn't play this, or anything, for ECFA points, because I didn't want to manage a second profile. So Estrangement wasn't released at the time I played this for ECFA, so I got 0 points for this. Another thing I was happy with is that I had 4 different runs where I wasn't getting out of like the first 16 measures of this song. So I'm glad that I was able to pull this out. In terms of advice for FA passing this song, I think there are a few prerequisites that are really clear, in my opinion. One is that you need to have complete comfort over executing 16th notes at 155, and that could be stream. I mean, it should be stream, but it should also be any sort of broken 16th note rhythm at 155. 2 is I think there should be a very automatic understanding of how to play normal foot switches. And the reason for that is because even though this chart's difficulty is characterized by the bass rush and the crossovers at the end, foot switches are something that's used from start to finish in this chart. If you think about FA passing as trying to get just as many masterfuls as you can, I mean, masterfuls are worth 3 times more than awesomes. You should really just take whatever masterfuls you can wherever they're free. So the last third of this song can really eat people alive. It's basically starting from here to the end. So you really just have to take what you can get. And it turns out that if you're good at executing things at 155 and good at playing foot switches, there's a lot of opportunity for masterfuls. Lastly, number 3 is I think you need to have a decent tank of stamina and some level of burst control for 24ths at 155. I put these 2 points together because in my experience, losing control on bursts really sets me up for failure, and then it just cascades down. I use too much energy in the base rush, and then I'm too tired to do the crossovers. I'm working through that, and then this section here, which should be free, you know, just 16th notes and foot switches, I'm too tired even for that. So, you know, having a good tank of stamina and good control on bursts is going to be a really big deal. That being said, I don't think Estrangement is a 14. I don't think the stamina demands are that intense compared to other charts in ECFA and even some of the 13s. But I think being able to pace yourself and maintaining energy from start to finish can be a really big hurdle in this chart. So those are my 3 things. Comfort playing 16th notes on 155. A very automatic understanding of how to play just normal forward-facing foot switches on the up and down arrow. And then also having a decent tank of stamina and not overdoing the bursts. With the general notes out of the way, I'm kind of going to go back and just look at very specific sections to inform some people on maybe how I execute very specific things in this chart. One thing I'll say in the beginning here is that there's a lot of things that are very double-steppable, even though that they were intended to be played as like crossovers, for example. So, for example, one section here is that this pattern is meant to start with your right foot, so that this left arrow is played with your right foot crossed under. But what I do is actually I double step the up in the left arrow so that this hold ends up on my left foot instead of my right foot. For the section that comes up immediately after, instead of playing this with my right foot and then double stepping immediately, I will just start this pattern on my left. So this is another double step from the left arrow to the up arrow. Another thing here, I mean, there's a lot of double steps, just like that happens all like in this one measure, or like half a measure. This thing, instead of doing this as a turn, where this left arrow is played with my right foot crossed under, I will simply just play the up and the left arrow both with the left foot, and then that opens me up for playing this group of 2 starting on the right foot. Coming out of this group of 2, the next pattern here, or sub pattern I guess, starts on the left arrow. So rather than doing something wonky where I mean, if I followed an alternating foot pattern and this down arrow was played on my left foot, technically you would play on the right foot, but that's just like nonsense. So I go from here and then I do a double step again from this down arrow to the left arrow. As far as this burst is controlled, I really just focus on my right foot. I really just focus on the rhythm that my right foot is playing, and then my left foot is just in for the ride. But I think I've talked about this in my video about high score, pretty much just any video that involves talking about drills or jacks. The most important thing for me is that as my right foot is playing 3 notes in a row, it's naturally going to lose some energy as I go on. So I need to make sure to start with more energy than I feel like I need. That way it has energy to lose as I go through it. So definitely just dig in. Don't be afraid to dig in on this and put more energy into it. Some brackets here. This 12th note thing is in a group of 3. So anytime you see things like this in group, like odd number grouping, so most commonly 3, you have the option to jack or foot switch them. So I've actually seen both done pretty equally. I opt for the jack, but I've seen plenty of people do a foot switch here instead. I think that was another double step. And then from here, there's maybe some bursty stuff, but nothing too wild. It's mostly just foot switches. So just foot switch to this section. This build up is hard. When I'm playing this section, I'm really just giving myself checkpoints every 2 counts. 1, 3, 1, 3. And that's kind of why I felt like it was important to be comfortable with 16th notes at 155. It's really important for me to feel out those checkpoints. 1. That's mentally how I'm thinking about that. It's just making sure I'm getting to those checkpoints. As far as this burst section that comes after, there's also more double stepping opportunities. Every group of 3 that happens on beat 4. 1, 2, 3. Oop, 4. Okay, so this is an up arrow that's played on the left foot. The way that it's intended to be played, I think, is that you would hit this down arrow with the right foot, and then this right arrow would be played crossed over. But something I've seen from other people's VODs, I used to actually do this turn all the time. It's actually easier just to double step this. So this up arrow is on the left foot, and then you would also play this down arrow on the left foot. From there, this down arrow is also played with your left foot. So you'll double step going into that group of 3, and you'll also double step coming out. So this left arrow will also be played with your left foot. Basically, both of these would be played left foot. And it's always going to be on beat 4. 1, 2, 3, double step. 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 And that's very useful because the way that I do turns, I mean, I don't know if this is universal or not, but crossovers just use more energy for me, even if I'm like really relaxed about it. So if there's a good opportunity to do a double step and it's comfortable, I'm gonna go for it. Those double steps are also really nice because it's in 8th note spacing rather than like trying to double step 16th notes. So those double steps work really, really well. As far as this burst section goes, my advice is that you really need to like, I've thought about this section a lot, and I feel like there needs to be, you have to like open up your brain, I guess, to, you know, seeing a 30-second note at 155 and not just seeing it as just like a blurb of notes in your mind, and being able to recognize that there's a very specific placement for each of those. And something it's really weird because something I almost never do when practicing things in ITG is I never go into training mode and I never slow things down. And I think I've seen other people do this. I think I've seen Chris do this. I've seen Grady do this. But yeah, slowing things down is something I've done with like every musical instrument I've played. But yeah, just never for ITG. And I feel like for something like this, it's really helpful to, you know, you slow it down to like 80%. You really hear those separations between the between the 30-second note spacings and the 24th note spacings, and then you just kind of build up the speed until you're more and more comfortable with it. You know, I could just say get good, but I mean, that doesn't help anybody. That being said, this is one of the easier sections for me just because of my skill set with burst control. For going into this section, my advice is to make sure you know ahead of time where the turns are. Something I noticed when I'm prepping for these turns. So this up arrow, for example, is like there's a space between here and the next pattern that's going to come up. And the way that I hit this up arrow is that I already know that there's going to be a turn in the next pattern. And when I hit this up arrow, I'm not hitting it completely straightforward. I'm hitting it in a way where, well, I guess I'm hitting it straightforward, but I'm hitting it in a way where my body pops up and it's already rotating after I hit that up arrow. So then when I hit this down arrow, my body, look, it's already facing right a little bit. That way it's already prepared to do this turn. And I think I do this with every single one of the turns. This pattern here is a reverse staircase. A staircase is anytime you just have these 4 notes in a row, or the other direction, which is right, down, up, left. So just the same thing facing left. The way that this pattern is meant to be done is that it's meant to be done as a reverse staircase. So you would start this pattern on the right foot instead. I found it easier just to double step this as well. Sorry, Trevor. I know it's hype, but I prefer not to do reverse staircases when I play. So that's another pattern where I will just double step it. Double step. So, okay, so similar thing here with the crossover prep. I'm going to hit this up arrow facing forward, pretty solid. But when I hit this up arrow and my body pops up off of the panel, it's going to pop up and start already rotating to facing left. So that way when I hit the down arrow, look at this. I'm already moving. Check out that right foot angle. When I hit this down arrow, I'm already facing left, and that reduces the amount of travel time that my right foot has to do to get over. Because otherwise, if you realize that there's a turn happening too late, it's going to be really hard to get your body to turn over that way. I think the same thing here. When I hit this down arrow, my body is already turned somewhat to the left. But then this upcoming section, I straight up just here. No, not. I need playback speed. This section here, I just straight up double step everything. If you're better at turns, you can just do those. But I'm not doing those. And then my last bit of advice is that there's 2 turns here at the very end that are very rapid, In my opinion, I've had to memorize that they're here because it always catches me off guard. The advice I gave myself is that I need to know that they're both on the right arrow. They're both left arrow cross unders, and they happen almost back to back. Turn, turn. And then the rest of the chart is... Hopefully the rest of the chart is automatic. The hope is that if you get this far, that you haven't completely burned out all of your energy and that you can still get good judgments here. Oh yeah, I was hyped about that. Tommy was here too. Tommy, the way that Kyle's setup is that right behind the cabinet here is a door to get into this room, and it's very close to the cabinet. And it's one of those things where if someone walks into the room while you're playing, it can be really distracting because like the door just like opens and like you can just hear it directly behind you. So as a courtesy, it's good to wait for the person to... You can wait to stop hearing footsteps, or just wait until you hear like the song end. So that way, if someone's on a really good run, then like you're not distracting everybody. And so Tommy was waiting outside the room for this entire run. In terms of takeaways, I always like to have takeaways. I think if you're trying to ease your way into passing harder 13s or break into 14s, you need to make sure that you're having new problems to solve. So in this case, I said foot switches should be automatic, and streaming 155 should just be cake, or just playing 155 should just be cake. When I play Estrangement, my brain is only engaged for the base rush and the crossover like reverse staircase section at the end, and then everything else is like reproducible on the spot. And I think the goal is to get good enough at the game that everything that you do is immediately reproducible, you know. Right now, I think everybody has like a baseline understanding of what is considered like easy for you, which is, you know, you could roll out of bed and do it. Moderate for you, which would be like you might need to warm up to it, but it's, you know, easily achievable still. And things that are like hard for you, where it's like you really have to dig deep to do well on something. What I hope to see is that as you get better, you want to be able to increase your baseline of what's considered easy for you. So if you do that, it just opens up more options for what charts you can play, and it lets you focus on the weakest parts of your game. If there's a chart that has 100 tech elements and 90 of them are, you know, I'm just autopiloting most of the time, then it's going to be really easy to just learn that remaining 10%. And with that said, once you increase that baseline, you do also still need to make sure that you're practicing regularly, because just because you establish a baseline doesn't mean that it just can't go away. Anyways, that's all I have for Estrangement. You know, thanks for listening. Thanks, Trevor, for this chart, because it's absolutely incredible. I'll catch you guys tomorrow.